It's Mountain Monday, and you know what to do. Breathe in. And out. And breathe in. And out. Those are the best breaths I've managed in a few weeks. You notice the title of the video on being unpopular. A bunch of things happened over the weekend that caused me to talk about this topic. I was originally going to do something else. I'm going to push that to either later in the week or next Mountain Monday. But this seemed, there were so many things pushing me towards talking about this. I'm like, gotta do it. And so what am I going about this? Well, I've realized it's a very funny thing, this criticism that something is unpopular, as if that's an indication of a lack of quality as opposed to just an observation. And a few things made me realize this. I was out at the Elora Writers Festival over the weekend. And for those of you who don't know, and most of you probably don't know, Elora is a small but well-serviced community near Guelph, sort of between Guelph and Kitchener-Waterloo in Ontario. It's about, well, it's supposed to be only an hour and 20 minutes from where I live, but with the traffic, it took more like 2.5 hours to get there. But I digress. It's a community far enough outside of Toronto that it has its own stuff. And one of the things it has is an independent bookseller and a writers conference where it's only one day. It's only about actually 4 hours. But they brought in five authors. It was, I think, 4 authors and a publisher, or an editor. And they each had like 20 minutes to talk, and you really got a good sense of them. And it was a neat mix because it wasn't a conference divided by genre. So there was a crime writer and there was a science fiction writer, J.M. Fry, who you guys have seen on this channel. There was a comedy writer, and there was a poet who's from Jamaica. So she did a reading it was Creole Light. I talked to her. Her name's Pamela Mordecai. And Terry Fallis was the name of the comedy writer. I didn't get to see the first session readings because it took me a lot longer to get out there than I expected. But, this was my first sort of thing of, in most of the circles I travel in, books, like actually reading a book that isn't, some sort of movie tie-in or something like that, or a comic book, that's considered sort of unpopular. Here, it was a big move to put genre fiction, meaning like either crime genre or science fiction genre, in this festival because the audience is older. The readers are older, and so it's a question of that not being popular with the people in attendance. Now, does that mean it's worthwhile? No, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But while I was driving out there, I have satellite radio in my car, so I had CNN on for a while following the U.S. election. I find I have to digest that in measured bursts lately. But they were, talking about Donald Trump's latest media grabbing thing. There was a interesting interview as well with Marco Rubio and on the way out. And it really gave me a better sense of the guy than the campaign sure did. But of course, that was a money issue, as he talked about. And so he was not a popular candidate, but he was probably one of the better ones for the job based on what I was listening to, based on the parameters of the Republican ticket. And then, of course, you get the current Republican Party stump speech. The attack line they're using on Hillary Clinton that I have heard repeated quite a bit is she is an unpopular candidate. And I've heard other pundits, even, some of Barack Obama's former people, thanks David Axelrod, love to point out that this is an election of two very unpopular candidates. Well, how unpopular are they if they manage to win the nominations for their parties? And yes, Hillary Clinton hasn't won yet, but she's something like 91 delegates away, and she's projected to win at least 200 in California alone, never mind New Jersey. So she can lose every primary going forward and still clinch the nomination. And so this idea that Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are unpopular candidates is a very strange narrative, because how did they manage to win their party nominations? Now, Donald Trump, you could argue, benefited from a very crowded field. The vote was split 5 ways, 6 ways, 1.9 ways. And so, okay, there's an argument that he won the nomination without, the plurality of the popular vote, but he still managed to clinch. And Hillary Clinton, like her or dislike her, she has managed to win primaries. So where do we get this thing about these are two very unpopular candidates? Well, it's a narrative. It's a narrative. Popularity is subjective based on how you're looking at something. And so what is this focus on unpopularity? Now, what does this have to do with Mountain Monday? What does this have to do with gaming? Well, there's a lot of talk about unpopular opinions or unpopular statements or unpopular personalities. And this is hitting a critical mass right now in a way that I'm not entirely comfortable with. I think we should be less concerned about whether a voice is popular and more concerned about whether the speaker has a point. Because we start getting into judging the worth of things by popularity. First of all, that's a great way to kill innovation. Second of all, that means that the people with the biggest bully pulpit win. And a lot of people I know got into video games and got into playing video games to get away from that. A lot of gamers in the real world tend to lose popularity contests, which is why a lot of gamers tend to like hard facts. They like clear right or wrong answers. They like to know the victory and fail conditions from the outset so they know for certain whether they succeeded or failed. Because the minute they get into those subjective judgments, well, then it doesn't tend to go very well for them. And then I start hearing friggin' CNN of all places upset that Peter Thiel was funding Hulk Hogan's lawsuit against Gawker. And the press corps is rising up against this, trying to make it seem like an unpopular action because they don't like the idea that millionaires can, what they claim to be, silence the press through lawsuits. Now, this is a flawed concept, that you can silence the press through lawsuits. A lawsuit is about whether there is grounds to sue. And yes, you increase the likelihood of a lawsuit when someone has money. But Gawker has been going after celebrities for years. All these people have money. Hogan had to make his case. Hogan's lawyers had to make their case. And no amount of money from Peter Thiel could make them make their case. They had to make their case. And so this idea that rich people can now silence the press through lawsuits, I find this a bit strange because rich people have been allowing the press to criticize them for years. Peter Thiel got mad because he wasn't criticized, he was outed. And I have a real problem with this allegedly left-wing press condemning a guy because it goes against their right to ruin people. Forgetting the fact that he didn't hate Gawker because he hates the media. He hated Gawker because they exposed a very private part of his life against his will that was not newsworthy. Whether Peter Thiel was gay has nothing to do with whether he can do his job. And it was wrong. It was just flat out wrong. But of course, for various reasons, he couldn't sue, so he waited to find a case where he could do something. That is his right. This isn't Citizens United. This isn't saying money is speech. The case was judged on its merits. But okay, so if you actually look at the merits of what Peter Thiel did, it's kind of hard to blame the guy, isn't it? Like, for people who don't know, being outed forcefully before you're ready can have profound negative psychological consequences. So the media, the mainstream media, is not going to get very far demonizing Peter Thiel on that count. So they go after his money. And this is not popular among journalists. But does he have a reason? Does he have a reason to dislike Gawker? Is he just suing anyone who disagrees with him? Or was this beyond the pale? Does he have reason to hold a grudge? And when you get away from whether what he did was popular among journalists, and when you start looking at the reasons he did what he did, all of a sudden the ethics of the issue completely shift. And so I'm starting to wonder if this is an unpopular candidate, or this is an unpopular position, isn't just a way of dodging a real ethical and moral dive into the core of an issue, because it gets much more complicated and it requires much more thought to determine whether an opinion or an action is objectively right or wrong, or of merit or without merit, as opposed to popular or unpopular, which is you can determine whether something's unpopular or unpopular with an online poll, right? But that's lazy. And why do I care about this? Why does it even matter? Why is this a Mountain Monday thing instead of just an intellectual exercise? Well, I feel like some people are being silenced for having an unpopular attitude just because they have an unpopular opinion. And that's wrong. The rights of the minority voice are a fundamental aspect of Western thought. Protection of the minority opinion, meaning the unpopular opinion. It is not enough for an opinion to be unpopular to be silenced. It must actually be objectively immoral, not amoral, immoral. I'm sure this will upset some people, but the whole point of this is to sort of meditate and think. And, what I'm asking, sort of the point of meditation before we wrap here, that I'm challenging people to do this time around, is don't reject an idea just because it's unpopular. Think for yourself and examine an idea based on its merits, because it's very easy in the age of social networking and in the age of, message boards and these echo chambers to get sucked in by popular opinion and have one's own opinion swayed by what it seems everybody else thinks, because it's a swayed sample. And so I'm challenging people to think for themselves. Don't just get angry because everybody else is angry. Don't just judge someone negatively because everyone else is doing it. Conversely, don't necessarily give someone a pass because everyone else is. And, if the games press did that more often, we'd have better coverage of video games. Let me tell you. Remember when you practically got run out of Dodge for criticizing BioShock Infinite because it was unpopular to criticize BioShock Infinite? And remember when it was unpopular to criticize Halo 3 and ODST? And then, it came out that BioShock Infinite's development was practically on fire for large portions of it. And Bungie was phoning in every Halo game after Halo 2. And then all of a sudden, it became popular to criticize those games. But those of us who had been right about these games, had been right to speak up and have an unpopular opinion and criticize these games, not because we necessarily hated the game, but because we didn't think they deserved the astronomically high scores they were getting. We were forgotten because we were drowned out because it was an unpopular opinion. And so, I want people to sit with that. And it's okay to not like a game that everybody else likes. Conversely, it's all right to like a game that nobody else likes. If you like the game, don't let anybody take that from you. You don't need a reviewer to validate your experience playing a game. If you like this game and a reviewer gave it a 4, who cares? Reviews don't sell games. There's so many games now, guys, that are review proof. It doesn't matter how poorly they do. Now, yes, there are bonus issues, but one review is not going to impact a game score to the point that it takes away someone's bonus most of the time. But yeah, I think the temperature in discussing these things would go way down and become the discussion become way more productive if people just stopped worrying so much about what was popular and started thinking for themselves. Cool? All right, let's close off. Breathe in. And out. And breathe in. And out.